We are going to start with Plato. He was a great literary person who contributed a lot to literary criticism. Now we are going to start with the age, or you can say when he was born. He was born in 427 BCE and died in 347 BCE. That was the time period of approximately 80 years. Now, he was born in Athens, that is in Greece, and he was founder of one of the academy that is very famous. Now, who was Plato? Plato was a great personality in literary criticism. He was born in 427, that I have already told you, died in 347 BCE at the age of 80. He was a student of Socrates and also the teacher of Aristotle. He founded the academy in 387 BCE. Now, he was having some aristocratic origins. He was born in Athens, that was one of the distinguished families there, and he was destined to political life. Means he must become a politician only until the execution of Socrates in 399 BCE, and it changed everything for him. There was a philosophical transformation that happened to him. The trial and death of his beloved teacher, Socrates, shook him deeply, and that's why he abandoned politics and he devoted his life to philosophy, seeking a world governed by reason and justice. Now, the dialogue as a literary art. He used dialogues as a form of literary art. Plato chose the dramatic dialogue form for his writing, featuring Socrates as one of the main protagonists. Now, he was having 36 dialogues ranged from early ethical inquiries to grand cosmological vision. He was doing everything in the form of dialogues. He also established one academy that was in 387 BCE. Plato founded the academy near Athens. It was the first institution of higher learning in the Western world, where he was teaching mathematics, philosophy, and science. These three subjects were flourished there in his academy. Now, we are going to know more about his literary criticism, that is the overview. Now, in the overview, we can see that Plato was the first Western thinker. He was the first person who sustained theory of art, poetry, and representation. And he was deeply ambivalent about all the three things that he was mentioning. Now, he was telling about the theory of form. First of all, art imitates reality, in which he specially categorized that, and especially he was highlighting that art is actually imitating reality, which itself imitates from eternal forms, making it art or making the art twice removed from the reality or truth. The second one of the important point is mimesis, that is imitation. What is imitation? Poetry and painting are mere mimicry. Actually, these are only the mimicry of the sensible world. That is lacking any genuine knowledge. That means no real knowledge is given. They are just making a copy of it. Now, the third is emotional danger. He was saying that literature inflames passion. That means it would create passion in the individual, whoever is reading or listening to that or watching that. He was thinking that it was weakening the rational soul. If you are having a logical soul, you are going to be weakened if you are going to use any kind of literature, especially tragedy. He was talking about tragedy and comedy. Now, the fourth one, he was telling about one ideal state. Now, what was that ideal state? He was telling that in ideal state that he named as republic. In that, he was telling that poets are censored. The poet should be censored. Their content should be censored, and the poet should be banished from the real republic, that is the perfect state, because art must serve moral and political acts. He was thinking that whatever the art is teaching others, it should have some moral and political act. Now, the next one is divine inspiration. The fifth one is divine inspiration. Now, he was telling that yet in the Aeon, Plato grants poets a kind of divine madness, inspired, not reasoned. He was not telling that the poets are having a reason. He was thinking that they are just inspired, not they are having any reason behind their creation. Number next is rehabilitation. Rehabilitation in Phaedrus and Laws. Plato softened. Now he was keeping his tone soft. Some poetry can serve philosophical and civic purpose. Like he was not telling that all poetry is wrong, but whatever the poetry that is so giving some philosophical and civic purposes, that poetry should be there in the Republic. He was thinking about it, and these are all the things that we are going to know further. Coming to the next. Now, one by one, we are going to understand it in detail form. Now, the theory of forms and its impact on art, we are going to know about it. He was telling that world of forms, world of forms is actually the form of beauty, justice, and goodness. That is the eternal truth. That means that the thing that is true, or you can say actually truth. Now, these are the world of forms where now after that, when it has come to the physical world, that is reality that we are looking around, sensible objects imperfect copies of the form. The real copy is not visible to any human being. Whatever the things that we are looking around, it is imperfect copies of the forms. Now I was telling that if any person is going to look at these things and they are going to create some art or poetry, that is imitation of imitation. This one is imitation and this one is imitation of imitation that they are going to make. So these things that we are making just like a poet is creating or any painter is painting, that is three steps removed from the truth and they are only the shadows. Now the key insight, the main idea behind it is that for Plato, a painter who depicts a bed is imitating a carpenter's bed. Fine. Now, which itself imitates the eternal form of bed. He was also imitating. So, art is third order reality or thrice removed from the reality. That means a copy of a copy and cannot convey the real knowledge or genuine knowledge. That was the part he was telling or he was emphasizing. Now, coming to the next, that is mimesis, that we all know, that is the art of imitation. In art of imitation that he has mentioned in his book, 3rd and 10th of the Republic, Plato launches his most systematic. He launches his most systematic critique of poetry through the concept of mimesis. He was telling that what is mimesis, what is it? Mimesis means imitation, that we know, that is called representation also or copy. Plato used it to describe how poets and painters and dramatists copy the appearances of things rather than understanding their true nature. They are not actually finding out the true nature, they are just copying the things. Now he was telling about craftsman analogy. He was giving one example how we are going towards the copied form only. The carpenter builds a real bed. That means approximating the real form that he cannot see because he was not having that much efficiency or caliber to see the real form. A painter merely depicts a bed's appearance. A painter is only depicting that. Now the poet similarly imitates without knowing the craft, virtue, and truth behind what they portray. Now he was telling that poets without knowledge. He was also criticizing the poets without knowledge. Poets should have good knowledge. Plato argues poets speak beautifully about subjects like love, war, and justice, yet have no genuine expertise in that. They succeed through inspiration or habit, not understanding. Aeon illustrates this dramatically. This thing is being mentioned in Aeon. Now, three types of imitation that he was telling. Number one is narrative, that author speaks directly. Number second is dramatic, that was the author speaks in character. And third one is mixed, he is mentioned here. He finds dramatic mimesis most dangerous as it blurs author and persona. Dramatic, or you can say the drama, he criticized the most. He was thinking that it is the worst thing that was happening in the society. Now coming to the next part about Plato. Now he was telling about poetry, emotion, and privacy. So he was telling rational or logisticon. This is one of the term that he used here. That is reason, wisdom, and philosophical truth. Like second thing he was telling spirited. That is theomedes. It means honor, courage, and ambition is there. Number third, appetitive. That is epithemicon. That desires, passions, and bodily urges. Now he was thinking that poetry feeds this part, weakening reason, means only due to this the poetry is the weakened form of art. Now the danger of emotional poetry. What is the danger he was telling out? Which danger is he talking about? Now he was telling that tragedy. What is it? Tragedy encourages grief and lamentation, which good men suppress in real life. Yet audiences weep freely in the theater. He was telling that if the person is going to weep, that person would become weak. Now, comedy encourages buffoonery and loss of dignity. But we could be ashamed of in real life. We applaud on stage. Means sometimes we are appreciating something on the stage, but in real life it is just insult for us. It is going to lose our dignity. Number next is even Homer, Plato's greatest target. He was telling about that. Portrays gods and heroes acting shamefully, weeping, lying, and commenting. He was also not appreciating Homer. Now he was telling the next part. When we sympathize with fictional grief, we water and nourish the emotional part of the soul, weakening rational and self-control. Somewhere we are becoming emotional and we are losing our self-control. Now he was giving one exception here also. Plato allows him to God. He was giving you can say censor to him to gods and praises of good men. Poetry that serves virtue and truth. He was just thinking that this kind of poetry is good, which is serving for the virtue and truth. That poetry is good for the society, not other kind of poetry is good for the society. Now we are going to end it here. The next part we will do later. Now we are going to start with the next part, that is fourth part, the Republic, that is called censorship and banishment of poets. Now, as per Plato, in the ideal city, Plato's ideal state that is called Republic, in that particular work, in book second and third and 10th, it is governed by philosopher, kings with wisdom and not poets with inspiration. He was thinking that kings with wisdom are more important than the poets. He was also saying that poets are dangerous because they appeal to emotion. He was thinking that poets are quite dangerous for the society because they are appealing to the emotion, reason, and may undermine the educational system of the guardians. He was thinking that it could be a threat to the educational system. Now, the next point, he was telling that all education is the ideal city, which moral virtue. He was telling that if the education is giving some virtue, that can be courage, temperaments, justice, pity, and there should be no room for other contrary examples. Means all the good things should be there in the particular work, or everything that is going to teach us courage, temperance, and justice and pity. The guardians or ruling class must be trained in music, gymnastics to develop a harmonious character. In order to develop harmonious character, they should be trained in music and other gymnastics, not corrupted by bad art. He was thinking that other things in the poetry could be bad art that would be disturbing for the kings. Now he was saying that what must be censored, which thing should be censored in the society. Stories depicting gods as immoral, jealous, and deceitful. He was saying that God should have all the good things. The God should not be immoral. It should not be jealous and deceitful. So these should not be the qualities of God. Homer's Zeus and Hera's schemes, he was already criticizing them for this. Now he was telling the next thing, tales showing heroes weeping, feeling death, and succumbing to passions. These things which are mentioned here in Aeschylus' Morning, Odyssey's Cunning at the time, he was saying that this thing is also bad, that it should not be there. Heroes should not behave in that way. He was saying that lamentation scenes, wherever we are lamenting or excessive grief is there, incompatible with the courage required of soldiers and rulers. These things should not be mentioned in the literature, and these feelings should not be evoked in the person who is watching it or reading it. Now, the representations of vice that seem attractive means the vice, whatever the vices we have, if we are representing them in attractive manner, people would have them in their own character. So these seems attractive and entertaining. Anything that makes wrongdoing enjoyable, that should not be there in the work. Now, one of the important quote of Republic, third part, we shall beg Homer and other poets not to be angry. If we strike out these and similar passages, the greater the poetic charm, the less are they meet for the ears of boys. He was thinking that this thing should not be there in the perfect republic. These are going to corrupt the society. Now, the fifth part is Eon, that is divine madness and poetic inspiration. In the short dialogue, Eon, Plato represents a paradox. What is the paradox? Poets produce inspired and beautiful works, yet they cannot explain or teach what they know. Does this mean poets are divinely gifted or merely mouthpieces of the god without rational knowledge? Now, this question is to be answered. Now, chain of divine inspiration, as per him, Eon 533d to 535a, the muse, that is the divine soul, the poet inspired vessel, the rhapsody, that is performer, the audience, that is moved listeners. Now, like a magnet attracting iron rings, each link in the chain is magnetized by the divine power, not reason. He was telling that favorable reading. Poets possess a special gift beyond ordinary human reason, a kind of divine channeling that produces beauty inaccessible to mere craft or technique. This evaluates poetry to be a sacred, almost religious activity. Now, the critical reading that he was telling that poets do not know what they say. They are like prophets or oracles, speaking truly but blindly. This is Plato's subtle attack. Poetry is unreliable. He was thinking that it is not reliable precisely because it bypasses rational knowledge, because it is not covering the rational knowledge, it is beyond that. The next sixth part, that is rehabilitation of poetry, Phaedrus and the laws. Now, Phaedrus is telling that erotic madness of beauty. Plato represents four kinds of divine madness: prophetic, ritual, poetic, and erotic. The lover, who perceives beauty in the beloved, glimpses the form of beauty itself. The next part, philosophy as true rhetoric. Philosophy, good rhetoric must understand the soul it addresses. Philosophical persuasion, grounded in truth and knowledge, is superior to mere flat. Now, written versus spoken word. Plato, through Socrates, famously critiques writing itself. Text cannot respond to questions, cannot adapt to their audience, and may breed forgetfulness. So, living dialogue is more superior. Now, role of beauty. In Phaedrus, beauty plays a positive role. It can lead the soul toward the divine, making art potentially redemptive when oriented toward truth. Now, the laws. What are the laws here? Music and social order. The laws, Plato's last and longest dialogue, treats music as a center to civic virtue. A city's character can be read in its music. Musical innovation is politically dangerous. The chorus of effects, the chorus of elders. Plato proposes a chorus of Dionysus for men over 30, and especially elder citizens over 60, testimony to his enduring belief in music's power. He was believing in music. Controlled poem. Now he was telling that unlike Republic, the laws allows more poetry but tightly supervised. It should be supervised. Poetry should be there, but it should be supervised. Hymns, encomia, and educational poetry are acceptable when judged by wise magistrates. These should be judged, they should be censored. Now, a more pragmatic view. The elder Plato shows compromise. Now, when he became adult, and now he was thinking that absolute punishment is replaced by strict regulation. There should be strict regulation there. Art can serve the good city when properly guided by philosophy. The art should be guided by philosophy only so that it would not do any harm to the society. Now, coming to the next. Now, key dialogues which are given in the literary criticism given by Plato. Now, one is that the Republic, book 1st to 3rd and 10th. Censorship, mimesis, banishment of poets. It is telling about most comprehensive literary critique, the ancient quarrel between philosophy and poetry. This is the main thing here. Now, the second one is, that is Eon, early, in which focus is on divine inspiration, poetic ignorance. He was saying that our rhapsody cannot explain his art. Poets are divinely inspired, but they are not having any knowledge. They are not knowledgeable. Now coming to the next, Phaedrus, he was telling in that middle and in the late part of it, he was telling that rhetoric, writing, and erotic beauty. He was actually criticizing. He was actually criticizing writing itself. Beauty can elevate the soul towards soul. It can take you there to the real forms. Now coming to the next, it is here love, eros, and beauty. Diotimos' letter. Earthly beauty leads toward the form of beauty, artist pathways. Now he was in the late music education and civic virtue. He was telling about that. Music shapes character, poetry allowed under strict philosophical supervision that is given in the end. Now middle Cratylus was focusing on language and nature. Are words natural and conventional? Explore the relationship between language and reality. Now coming to I was telling that the ancient quarrel between philosophy and poetry, they are totally different from each other. Now, poetry claims to teach virtue, history, and practical wisdom, to be the moral educator of Greece. And philosophy, what does philosophy claims? Only philosophy, through dialectic and reason, can approach truth, justice, and the good life. Homer as rival, he was thinking that Homer was a rival. He revered as the educator of all Greece, exactly role Plato thought only philosophers should occupy. Now, Plato as rival poet, paradoxically, Plato is himself a literary master. His dialogues are dramatic, rhetorical masterpiece of ancient prose. Emotional appeal, poetry reduces everyone, democratizing culture, but for Plato, truth is not democratic. It requires education and reason. The self-refuting problem. Plato uses beautiful writing to argue against beautiful writing. Attention scholars have debated for 2400 years. Now, what is the style of poetry? Plato acknowledges poetic beauty, the greatest pleasure. Yet this very charm makes it more dangerous. But as per philosophy, a conditional welcome, Plato ends Republic with an offer. If poetry can prove its worth and virtue, it may return. The door is left open. The next part we are going to do